All right, the call to order. The approval of the minutes.
Do we have a quorum?
If we don't have a quorum, let's not do that. We'll just discuss what we.
Yeah,
right.
This is, I would consider an informal gathering.
Okay, all
we
right,
don't have
we
a
can do
quorum.
that, we can do that.
Do we?
Let's jump right down to the Andy Kendall
Yeah.
update then.
Yeah,
I have had some email exchanges with him, which I think I have forwarded to the group.
Yeah.
We are locked in for July 20th at 1 o'clock.
okay, cool.
And I got an email from Representative Umberger, and she said that she had notified or invited the delegation, that they had been notified, and hopefully they will be here as well. I think it's important that they be here. And I think this is Andy Kendall, I think he's still not quite sure what he wants to discuss here at that meeting, so I think we've got to give some thought to that as well.
Well, did he request guidance?
He said, I think we should talk. He said to get a clear
Okay.
sense of what it is you want me to talk about, and I understood that completely. So I will be back, and we've got 2 weeks, he'll be here 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
So I think we need to somehow get
Right.
some consensus here today.
Okay, does this make quorum?
Mm-mm.
No?
No.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Also, I did, as I mentioned, talk with Representative Umberger. She agreed to give me about 5 minutes on the delegation meeting. And I think she was,
That's before Andy gets here?
no, it's after.
After,
They
okay.
are meeting July 25th,
All right,
and he's gonna be here on the 20th. But she did agree to give me a few minutes to talk to the delegation.
right,
So I will do that.
right.
As-
But if you can elicit questions and comments, you could keep it running. I mean, she'd have to shut the conversation down if the delegation was involved in it. I
Well,
mean, 5-minute opening's
Yes,
not bad.
yes.
Yeah,
See,
right.
and what I'm hoping is that since the delegation's meeting is after Andy Kendall will be here, I'm hoping that there will be some interest,
Yeah.
that they will have questions and so forth.
Right,
And basically, we can have a meaningful discussion
yeah,
here
good.
on that. So that's my hope, and she has agreed to do that.
I just wanted to
Yes.
comment about that. I think it's good that Representative Umberger has invited all of the delegation. I guess I would like to see our committee follow up with an email invitation to all members of the delegation
It's a good idea.
to invite them from us to come to this meeting, ask them to bring their questions, and then also outline what our hopes and expectations are following this meeting, which is that on the July 25th delegation meeting, that they will take a vote and either will have a majority that would support moving forward with the process. We won't have a majority of moving forward with the process, or if they choose to take no action, I would assume that means that that's a no. But that you know, that's what our hope is, inviting them to this meeting with Andy Kendall, that they'll ask the questions they have about what we're talking about, what the Kendall Group is talking about, and then hopefully by the 25th be able to give the Kendall Group what they're asking for in that letter of support moving forward
Yep.
with this process.
So if that's a hope, one of the things we want to get across to Mr. Kendall is he has to leave the room with them understanding what the next step is.
Right.
And the dream is, and he can say why it won't cost any taxpayer money. If he can put that idea in their head of what the next step is, then, because if we just say, well, we want to proceed, the first question is going to be, what's it going to cost?
Right.
It's a fair guess.
And
This
that's
apparently has
something
been
we
mentioned. This apparently, at the end of last week's meeting, you may recall Representative Bucco and I were talking, and that was a question that he raised, what this was going to cost the county.
Okay.
And he didn't state it as such, but he kind of implied that that was a question or an issue that some of the delegation had, that even just signing onto the study meant that they were agreeing to pay for the cost of this thing. And they didn't know what the cost was. Now, I talked with...
We need clarification
yeah,
about that
yes,
during that 20th meeting.
Yes,
Right.
we
Yes.
do need
Well, no, I'm
clarification.
taking the question, I'm sorry, the
Go
question
ahead.
was what kind of, if Mr. Kendall is looking for instruction,
Right.
this is kind of one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now, according to Commissioner Sorensen, and according to Business Administrator Ken Robichaud, they've had conversations with Andy Kendall, and he's led them to believe there's going to be no cost at all to the county on
Cool.
this.
All right.
We just need that reiterated in the public
Yes,
session.
yes.
Where,
Right.
if that's a concern that they have, we
Yes.
need to get that
And that's a
concern
legitimate
answered.
concern, and I can understand them signing on to it, and then finding out, my God, we've agreed to pay a bill here.
Right.
So that's legitimate.
So that's one of the things that he needs to cover
Does this
if
make
he's looking
quorum?
for guidance.
We are quorum, yes, we are.
All right, the only reason I'm saying it, because we were talking about taking an action, which was sending out a letter, and we
Yes.
need quorum to make that
Okay.
decision, so wonderful.
Sorry to be late.
Susan
You're
makes the
Susan, and
motion, no.
that's what counts. Okay, so you want me to send an email invitation to the delegation, inviting them again to the July 20th meeting.
In outlining, at that point in time, hopefully we will know what Andy Kendall is gonna cover, and we can give a list of, these are the talking points that he's gonna cover.
Yes.
And this is what our committee
For us.
hopes to come out of that meeting with the next step ready to take, for you, asking you to take the next step at the July 25th meeting.
Right, and that's the other place where we need to be able to explain whether or not there's gonna be tax money involved in that or not. And that's kind of what I was saying, we want Mr. Kendall to
Right.
end his first conversation with, is the next step of this doesn't cost money either, because you've got volunteers willing to do
Right,
the front work.
right.
Okay. Cool.
Is someone taking minutes of this meeting today? Because Melissa is not going to be here.
Yeah, she might take them off the tape.
Oh, okay, all right, so we're covered. Okay,
Cool.
That's the beauty of a tape.
The other thing I was
Yes,
thinking
Henry, go ahead.
Mr. Kendall is have him get in touch with, I'm sure he has been, but Peter Benson, and see if he can get some sort of really round idea of what it is that they can offer us in the sense of fostering charitable contributions for this process.
Yeah, I have been in touch with Peter Benson also about this, again, keeping him in the loop.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Peter is not going to be able to make the July 20th meeting.
Okay.
But he appreciates being kept in the loop. I think his concerns still are the same as Andy Kendall's. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, I have not discussed in any way, shape, or form any sort of financial support from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. I
Right.
think they are still taking a wait-and-see attitude. They want to
Right.
be sure that everybody's on team here before they even begin to talk about
Yeah,
that.
but what strikes me is that if this does progress on,
Yeah.
is that one of the things that was sort of being offered is that the charitable foundation has and can utilize existing charitable streams. There's already processes out there that they have, and they can channel money our way, but he was also very excited about the farm. I don't know if he and Mr. Kendall have worked before together, but if
I don't
Mr.
think
Kendall
so.
can kind of like say, another wonderful part here is that
Right.
the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is looking at this particular process with interest, which could open up avenues of donated capital.
So
And I
a
think that-
talking point that we could ask
Yeah.
for from Andy would be, how does he envision the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation being involved in this
Beautiful.
process?
You say these things so
Perhaps.
well.
Summed it right up.
Perhaps New Hampshire Charitable and other area foundations,
Yeah.
charitable groups, funding sources.
And others, yeah, other funding.
Yeah, but
funders.
that's a lot of what the foundation does, is they know who's doing what when they make contacts.
Okay.
So I think another thing that we're hoping that he'll come out of this, talking to the delegation about, is really the steps, or what this process involves.
I think another thing is he has to make the delegation understand that he requires people from the county's assistance.
In other words, what is he
Right.
expecting from us as
Well,
far as?
Or
he,
buy-in, you mean,
or,
guys?
no, he requires, he said that he would have to rely also on people in the county to do some of the footwork and
Oh, yeah.
stuff.
Okay, volunteers.
Because we've not heard any support for this committee from the delegation.
No?
All we've heard from the delegation is the Kindle organization.
Well,
So I think it's important too that the delegation understand that there is a committee of people that have been working to foster this program as well.
Right.
So-
And that they support that as well.
Let me ask a question here, because apparently I was not paying close attention at one part of it. But in talking with several people, maybe some here, Andy Kendall apparently made the comment, and I think it was during the tour, or maybe when he was talking with the commissioners, about the Kendall Foundation may put a lot of this work out for bid, RFP.
No.
No, you
I
never
don't
got
know.
that?
I never
Never
heard
said
that.
that.
Okay, all right, someone made that comment, and I said, well, boy, I guess I wasn't paying attention, because I didn't hear that at all.
The first time I heard that was when it came up when the commissioners and
okay.
Ken had said that Representative Unberger had sent down a request for an RFP.
Yes, yes.
And I had never heard that before
Yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah.
That came as a surprise to me, but that was the first time I heard of that. I was always under the impression that it was the Kendall Foundation itself that was going to be doing the work.
Yeah.
I did
Susan.
hear someone outside of a public meeting talking about the Kendall Foundation getting involved in things and then setting things out to others so that they.
Okay, all right.
And again, I look at that as collaboration
Yeah.
and cooperation.
Yeah, yeah,
That they don't know all there is to know about everything in every little area that they work, and so they do go out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This person
Yeah.
that had said that to me looked at it as being very negative.
Well, he spoke of past successes,
Exactly.
which they instigated.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
it got taken over by interested parties.
Yes.
And they move on to the next one.
Right,
That's their
right.
job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spin them off to
Yeah.
local groups. And
Right.
Yeah.
when you read this stuff online, it seems very clear
Yeah.
to me that they don't want to own everything. They
Yeah.
don't want to do all the work. They want to
Yeah.
set things up and build a good foundation for
Yeah.
people to do their own.
And that's
Or
charitable.
they assist people in building the foundation
Correct.
to take it over
Yes.
themselves.
Correct.
And I think that's an important thing he has to make a point of.
Yeah,
Correct.
They are there almost as a mediator to get things rolling
Yeah.
for you, but it's the local people that end up carrying that forth. So
Yeah.
that's why I say it's important also for the delegation to at least support this group, because it's gonna take a group of individuals to continue the process.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I
Well-
kind of look at it as I'd rather see them support the concept. And
Yeah.
we
Well,
can
that-
make up the
yeah.
group.
I guess,
Go ahead, Susan.
no, you go ahead.
Oh, I'm just thinking that one of the things that we should do outside of, we're trying to clarify what we want Andy to cover when he comes here to speak before the delegation, but to address Becky's question, I think, in a private conversation, we should ask him, how does he envision working with this group? How can we help in this process? What is he going to be looking at in terms of, I'm guessing that he's going to need some sort of group of people that are sort of trying to get people to participate, doing some of this outreach to get people here to be a part of the process. Is that a role he sees us filling? How does he envision that piece going? And that would give us some direction on.
What I want to say, I do remember, as you recall, he talked a lot about their involvement with the Cheshire County a few years back, when they were making the same kind of decision that our delegation is now making. What are we going to do with the farm? And I said, this was back like 2010 or something. It wasn't last week. This was
Yeah.
back away.
12, I think.
And they were involved in that. And if I remember correctly, a lot of that work was kind of farmed out to other groups. There were other groups, other entities involved in that collaboration as well. And so they were doing some of the work.
Land for Good, I think, was one of the ones that was involved in that
Okay,
process.
and if I remember correctly again, and if I missed it, somebody correct me real quick, but collaboratively and working together, they did come up with some solutions on that. In fact, he cited that a couple times. In fact, he sent it to us. Somebody sent me the whole thing.
Melissa did.
Oh, okay, on Cheshire County. So there is a history here.
Yeah.
And I do remember him making a reference to that. And it may have been at the commissioners' meeting here when he spoke to them, I'm not sure.
On the tour too.
Was it on tour too? Okay. So it could very well be that that's where, I'm not gonna say the confusion, but the idea came that they would be farming some of this work out to other groups. I don't know, but,
Let me,
Susan, go ahead.
yeah, just following up here about expectations of groups and organizations. I was kind of surprised because we had 5 delegation members here at our last meeting.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised and if I read it correctly, to discover none of these 5 people had said that the delegation chair had been in touch with Kendall, exploring their opportunities. We were here talking about updating what we're doing, and then it sounded almost to me like Chair Umberger had a private conversation, but that never came up. And we had the Learning Center people here, and I feel like something that I read somewhere or heard somewhere is that we're still going on 2 different tracks.
Yep.
Well-
And when we talk about who we are and what we're going to do and our volunteerism, I'd like us to talk about the 5 people, or ever how many, are on the Learning Center project, and how do they fit in? And did anybody have any feedback after the meeting from Representative Cordelli or Representative McConkey, laying it on the table and saying, oh yeah, we're working on that with Kendall also. We'll be glad to come to this meeting on the 20th of July, but we're gonna have our own meeting on the 25th. I guess I'm totally, I was blown away to hear that this other group was still working on a different team.
Is that bothering?
Well, that's been their charge, though. I mean, they were charged by the delegation to do something, and I think they have focused on the Learning Center.
Yeah, and they're supportive, not exclusive.
I'm sorry,
They're
what?
mutually supportive. Our effort and theirs are mutually supportive.
Yeah.
I think it's just surprising that someone else was also in touch with Andy Kendall, if that's sort of your point.
Yeah, I don't know if that has happened. I don't know what sort of contact
Well, it
that's.
sounded like from the email
You sent.
that you sent that Representative Umberger had contacted Andy Kendall to ask her to come to speak on the 25th.
Yes,
And so.
he was not available on the 25th.
And so I think is that what you're referring to, that,
And
you know.
was it not after we had said,
Yeah.
we had agreed that we would
It
go
appears-
for July 20th?
Yeah.
Because that was
appears
good
that
for
way.
us,
Yes.
and it was good for the commissioners, and we
Yeah.
were gonna start publicizing that and do press releases.
Yeah,
Did we say that?
yes, we did.
Okay,
Once it
just
was
checking.
confirmed.
Yeah, no, you're on board, you're on target.
I
Henry.
mean, I spent very little time with Mr. Kendall, but his excitement came across. Anybody he talks to on the delegation is a plus, in my opinion. because
Absolutely.
it's-
Oh,
mean,
I agree, I agree. And hopefully he'll be able to at least broaden their approach as to how they see this.
Yeah.
What the possibilities are. And on the 20th, they'll be, prepared to ask a lot of questions. I hope that there will be a long, healthy Q&A after his talk. But anyway, there were a lot of questions that I did email Andy Kendall and asked him for a clarification on the funding, but he never did give me an answer on that. And
We'll find
so
out.
that's still is
So
up in
it
the-
seems like there's 2 things we need to do in this meeting today, is 1, clarify talking points for Andy.
Exactly.
And 2, be clear and make a sort of, maybe another set of talking points for the delegation members to invite them to that meeting on the 20th, so that they are there.
Well, on the email so far, it's, my
The
notes-
email to the
my notes are
delegation
to
members.
Mr. Kendall, right? He needs to, this is backwards, of course, but end with a moderate description of the next step. If you decide that what I'm saying is positive and you want to proceed it, here's the next logical step to take. Or here's what the next step will be. Just something about that.
So we had three things that we wanted him to cover that we've discussed so far
Yeah.
today.
The other
What
one,
are
right?
the co-
You have them, go ahead, yeah.
One was the cost to the county. Is there any out-of-pocket cost? And, how does he envision working with folks in the community volunteers? How does he envision the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and other funders being involved?
Right.
And then, what he needs as a next step from the delegation, and with that, what the next steps of this facilitated process
Right.
would be.
Yeah. The little bit of conversation that he sort of had about his organization as opposed to our specific situation, he does have success stories. I mean, I have to anticipate that he's pretty good at selling
Yes.
his
Yeah.
ideas.
Yes, yeah. He's a good speaker.
So.
Yeah, so talking about his foundation.
Yes, Olivia.
Should somebody write these talking points up and get them to Andy? How do we want to
Or
proceed?
to all of this committee.
Yeah, prior to the 20th?
Yes. No, he, in his email to me, and I think I forwarded it to the committee, he made it clear that between now and the 20th, we've got to talk.
Okay.
We've got to he's got to get a sense, okay, I'm coming, I'm talking, what is it that you want me to focus on?
Mhm.
What is it you want me to say? And I think that's a very reasonable request. So I've written down some of the things that we've talked about here, and I'll get to them.
So,
I think one of the first points he has to make is that if he does not have support, the Comeau organization will not come in.
Well, yes, he's got. I think he's got to reinforce that.
Well, I think,
I think he will.
why continue on with the presentation if he finds out
Yep.
that 10 members here don't want him?
Yeah.
They want to listen to him, but the support's not there, and if he's not going to get the support, why go on?
I think his coming up on the 20th is basically a do or die situation.
Well, no, I mean, but he needs
Right.
to reiterate to the delegation
Yes.
very
I think he
strongly
will.
as his
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
point is
Yeah.
that,
And it could very well be, as I said, when we had talked a while back, this is before he went on vacation, I laid out to him that we have been we were unsuccessful in meeting our criteria and of getting both the commissions and the delegation on board. And I said, and I know that both you and Peter Benson had indicated that was an important first step. Without that, they were reluctant. And we talked further, and I said, having said all of that, I guess my next question is, would you still be willing to come up and talk to us? And he said, yes, I will. And I think how both he and I interpreted that, without clearly stating it, is, okay, I'll come up there to try to make the pitch. And if I'm unsuccessful in doing that, we just chalk it up as a lesson learned and we'll both move on. And I think that's how we should look at this. He's agreed to do this. And if he's unsuccessful in convincing the delegation, because they seem to be the last holdout here, then okay, that's, good shot at it, but we're not getting there.
the only other thing that Mellisa had brought up is if he can give us some of his talking points.
Yes.
So that she can
Yes.
get them out to
Yeah.
the
Let me
delegation
write that
ahead of
down,
time.
too, yeah.
So they can review it and maybe have better questions
Yeah.
or more questions for him
Yeah.
when they get here.
That's what you were talking about with the
Right, so
The
it
email
seems like
message.
between what Wendy and Henry just said, the 4 points plus reiterating that we need support from the delegation, and then maybe he could give examples of what he's done, that's kind of what we want to
Yeah,
communicate
yeah,
to him.
yeah.
And the last of it is, who writes the proposal and what's the timeline? So that we have a
Right.
document.
Yeah, that might be within the next steps in the process.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
Timeline.
yeah, timeline would be good too.
Yeah.
So, does that seem pretty good to everyone of how we're gonna communicate to Andy?
Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
as far as writing the email,
Do you want me to write it?
Well,
Write a draft
well-
and send it out to everyone and we can all provide comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've written down 6 or 7 things here and again, you want me to make this contact with Andy and basically to do this?
yes.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Okay, so
We
do
need
you
a
want me to
motion for that.
write out the do you want me to write out the talking points, or are you gonna take care of that?
Well, I've got 7 talking points. The first one is cost to the county. These are things I'm gonna be discussing with him, someone's gonna be discussing. Working with other folks in the county, try to clarify the role, how he sees the role of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation working with him. What he sees as the next steps, talking about his success stories, asking him if he has any material, talking points and so forth that we could hand out, and also what he sees as the timeline. What did I miss?
I just think also he might want to touch on, instead of his other success stories, what he sees for potential for the Carroll County lands.
I think that's the key. To me, that's the key right there.
Instead of what
And-
he's done for
Yes,
successes, he
yes.
was excited to be
And-
here. What does he see as the possible?
Well,
Exactly.
I don't know though, because he does bring a lot to the table as far as what can happen, but I think his role is really bringing out what the community needs, and he doesn't know what that is.
No, but
hasn't
I think the delegation needs to know that they're not, that in his mind and through the tour, those that were on the tour, I mean, even the buildings were important to him. So I think if he could just barely touch on it, I mean, I know he does a lot, but he was so excited between having the buildings and the land and everything else, that I think if he just clarified to them, whether it's leased or what, that everything that's on this property right now is a very, very valuable asset.
Right, well, when the conversation when he was here, I mean, this is part of his presentation, he can stipulate where successes have been, but the other thing he said when he was here, and I'm sure it'll be part of his conversation naturally, is that the opportunities that exist here
Right.
far exceed any other project that I've started. Just what
Right.
the physical starting point is so far ahead of everything else.
Well, and
But
I
he's
think
an
that's
exciting
true.
guy. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to dictate his speech.
No.
There's a couple of things that he really, I mean, he either has to sell this or not. He's asking us for those things that we consider critical, not what he's going to say,
Yeah.
right? And the
Right.
critical aspect is get across the cost thing, figure out where future funding will come from other than tax stuff and this other stuff that we talked about here. That's all he really is asking for from us, is these are the critical things that'll take the willingness to listen that is apparently starting to exist in certain members of the delegation and turn it into actual listening. And I have absolute faith that Mr. Kendall's presentation is enough. You know, he understands one thing. There is I'll call it a political situation that exists in Carroll County, and he wants to know what he should put in there to alleviate those, or at least expose those concerns. Selling this idea, he knows what he's doing. I mean,
So,
Yeah.
essentially, you were talking about having a conversation with him, and you were talking about writing something down for him,
Mhm.
but the bottom line is, there's a barrier that has built up. How do we break that barrier down? What is it that the delegation members need to hear? And from what I've heard, it all has to do with money. How much they expect from us, what the funding source would be, and what happens in the end. I think if he can, and he knows what he's doing. I mean, that's the biggest problem we have. We would be, down the road by now if we didn't have the problem with the commissioners not agreeing with the delegation, and go back to the coalition to save the county farm. There's lots of work that's already been done. It just seems to me like if he can be here and speak his piece and include what he says as other times when he's had to work, he sees us as we're way up here, and he's been in communities where they have to start down here. Unfortunately, starting down here might be easier if you don't have this brick wall right here, and we do have a brick wall. That's what we need him to talk about, and we need to fill the room so that we get other people excited. So the commissioners will say, well, this all sounds good, and the delegation will say, I'm counting 20 votes here. I need to follow this plan. These people know what they're doing, and it's a good idea. And I think it's up to us to get the people here who
Agreed.
will influence the delegation. What Kendall tells us, it's not going to cost money. I think maybe you should talk to him, but I think that it's important to get talking points down
Yes, I
in
do.
writing too.
I guess one of the things here and help me here a little bit, my perspective, what we've discussed, the things that we want to talk with him about, is basically the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what he's going to need.
Mhm.
But the big question is, for what? What is it? What, this is what we need to make things happen, but what is it we want to happen?
Right.
And so I think,
Well, the mission statement's what we want to happen.
well, we got the mission statement.
That's what we want to happen.
That's right. So how do we?
Optimal use of county assets for the
Right,
benefit of Carroll
right.
County.
So now we're focusing that. This is what we want. This is our
Yeah.
goal. But how?
Well, that's our mission.
Yes.
Well, I think-
How do we do it?
In the past meetings.
What do we do to
Strategy.
make that happen?
Strategy.
That's what I talked about last week.
Well,
We-
right now, the conversation that Mr. Kendall will have with the delegation and the immediate response, not immediate, but the resulting response from that, there's not a lot of sense. I mean, I thought a lot about what I'd like to see. There's not a lot of sense to spend any time on that until we have a buy-in from the delegation, to a degree. Or at least until there's enough of a willingness to open that we can expand it. Right, because you can get farmers involved, you can get people involved, and it could apply a little pressure to people that are willing to listen, not people that are just said it's just not gonna be what it was. I accept that. They don't want anything to do with the way the farm ran in the past, and this is nothing about that. Right, this is about this.
Yep.
Right, and until the Kendall thing, there's no sense in us spending a whole lot of time saying this is what we'd like to see happen and stuff like that, because if that fails, it's done.
Mhm.
It's done. This is the best opportunity we have to get a buy-in from the delegation, because this particular person can put forward how this is actually going to generate private industry, or a private income from the agricultural economy in Carroll County. He's going to, what he has said he's done in other places is that he has increased the amount of money that comes into a county, if you want to look at it at that level,
Yeah.
by significant amounts by
Yeah.
the wise use of public assets.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If he can't sell that idea, we can't sell that idea.
But see, but that's the point. We've got to more clearly define what some of our strategies may be, so that he can go out and he can talk about that.
Okay.
I mean, you just very articulately made the case as to what some of us would like him to talk about.
Right.
This is the strategy.
Well, he'll be better at it than I am.
Well, and I think part of this, it starts out with public input sessions. What do you want to see here? And what are some of the opportunities? So I
Right.
don't think we can get to strategies until we've gathered that
Right.
input.
Well, you look at, because of past successes, there's certain things that he's going to repeat. Past success will generally result in repeated processes, because you're going to try it forward. So there's a lot of stuff that's already there as far as, these are your goals, is to,
Yeah.
to get to these things. So that's our mission statement. Our goals are going to be establish a freeze drying, or whatever it is going to be, whatever
Right.
they are, growing, whatever. That's a goal, and now, and then after that, you have objectives. And the objective then becomes, try to get, say, what is it, Valley Originals, which is a whole bunch of restaurants in North Conway, to
Yep.
get together and put together purchase ordering lists, and then find a farmer to come do it, and the county can rent them the land to grow the vegetables for the local restaurants. I mean, that's an objective. Right, so that's the kind of thing, but the step we're at right now is, I think the only thing that I really see we're spending time on is making sure that we understand what the email is that we send him and prepare him for that meeting.
I think,
Olivia.
Steve, those 6 or 7 things that you just outlined,
Yeah.
I think that's really all we need to talk to
Yeah.
Andy about right now. He has expertise in facilitation and process, and we can leave that to him at this point. I think right now, that's all we really
Yeah.
need to communicate with him, and then we can start talking about the next phase once we know we have support
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
all of our constituents here.
Well, enough of them,
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
as you mentioned, we need a majority.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Right, the county needs a majority of the delegation to think that this could work. That's all I'm asking now, just for them to look at, they go, wow, this could work.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we can focus on strategy and
Yeah.
ideas and, the potential use. I think we're not there yet.
Yeah, I would say those talking points, communicating those to Andy Kendall, and then communicating with the delegation, again, inviting them to this program and outlining what we hope their next action will be as a result of this visit. I think that's, that's getting Andy Kendall ready for the program, that's getting the delegation prepared for, what we'd like them to consider, and putting that next step out there.
Yeah. Would you two put together the first draft on the email to him that was gonna get sent around?
The email to,
Mr. Kendall, because,
Yeah.
and then, because I figured, when you said, do you want me to send it? I figured, yeah, definitely it comes through the chair.
Yeah.
Right.
What I would like to do
Yeah.
is I'd like to combine that with a phone call. And tell, to me, words are always cold. You never get the real meaning or significance of words, but when you're talking with someone,
Yeah.
you capture that.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do is I would tell him in the conversation that I'm gonna be sending an email along, that we're gonna be working together, but that I'd like to just discuss some of those things as well. You get the tone of the voice, you don't get the body language, but you get the tone of the voice, the excitement or anything. And I think that's important, because what I can say is that when I have talked with him, he definitely is excited about this project,
Yeah.
which you're never gonna get in an email.
Yeah.
But he is excited, he's enthusiastic about this.
Yeah.
I think he wants to come up here. And he certainly indicated that to me, and I think he wants to see this thing work and get going.
Yeah.
But to me, just a phone call, talking with someone
Right.
is a lot more effective than an email.
Yeah, might I recommend is that
Yeah.
when we have the email, tell them that you're sending an email, I'll give you a chance to read it, and then I'd like to talk more with you
Yes,
about it. Right?
yes,
And
yes.
so you get his reactions
Yep,
plain,
Yep.
and then if he has any questions.
yes.
Rather than try to explain what the
Right.
email's
No,
about.
I agree, this way, it's gonna be a
Yeah.
combination, it's gonna be the email and a conversation.
Okay.
I wanna, the other thing is, I think you lose a lot of time in emails. He has questions, he emails me back. Then I gotta turn around, email him back with the answers. But when you're talking with someone, you get that immediate exchange going on. And I think that's important.
I think it's a problem of our age. That's talking to most people. You know?
I guess I'm sure my age of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, but Wendy, if you would put together some of those thoughts down there and email to the committee. But what we have to bear in mind is, by the time Andy's been up here, by the time we talk with the delegation, we are now through the month of July.
Yeah.
And the commissioners want something by August. That does not give us much time. Even though it's just a preliminary rough outline, it does not give us much time. And we've got a lot of work to do in a very short period of time. And the thing is, I don't think Andy is gonna give us a lot of answers. I think he's gonna give us a lot of things to think about.
Yeah.
And what if the delegation still says at that minute, well, we think it's interesting, but we're not ready to commit to that? Then we've got to make a decision, what do we do? And my feeling is, the heck with it, full speed ahead. Let's continue with it,
Yeah.
with or without him.
Yeah, I gotta admit, overall, the way I look at the question I really have for the delegation is if the presentation, when the presentation happens, and if there's an opening that exists after that, is are you willing to allow us to continue to pursue this?
Yeah.
That's the question I have for the delegation, and I'd be willing to put in effort afterwards, as long as the delegation has a buy-in, this could work, okay, well, we'll volunteer some more time, and we'll put down what the next objective is, or the next goal is. But that's all I'm really looking for right now.
Okay. Becky, you were kind of thinking out loud there.
Well, I
talk
was
to us.
thinking out loud that this is a commissioner-appointed committee.
Yep,
Yeah.
So I guess our main goal is to report back to the commissioners,
Yep.
and they will report to the delegation.
yep.
If the commissioners say to continue, things have happened through
Cool,
the
yeah.
county without the delegation.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I think
Yeah.
we would have to prove to the commissioners at our August meeting that regardless of whether we have support or not from delegation and Andy Kendall, that probably this group is willing to still go ahead. It may take more than a year and a half at that
Yes.
point, but
Yeah.
it will.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think I mentioned at the last meeting, it may have been a conversation I had with Dave Sorensen after. But I did indicate to him that it could very well be that with an election year and everything else, that this committee may need more than a year to put something meaningful together. And our end product may be a multi-year project, that you just phase it in one step at a time. I said, the bottom line is, Dave, I said, if we reach that point where the committee realizes we do not have enough time to do this right, would you be willing to give us the extended period of time? And he said, let's make that decision when we get there. He says, but we're certainly open to that.
Yeah.
So even though we have talked about August, we've talked about November, I don't want to just put something on the table that even we feel, as a committee feel, this is not what we really feel we can and should do.
Half-baked.
I want it to be good. And if it's rejected along the line, we can say, we did our job.
Right.
We put something significant and meaningful on the table. And we-
I've got to say that if, I wouldn't be at all embarrassed and go in front of the commissioners and say, what did you achieve? I said, we achieved openness on the delegation to pursue the process. It strikes me as we did our job so far.
Yeah. Susan?
And essentially, I was gonna say that same thing. Let us not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
We have county assets now that are doing what they should be doing. We have a forest management plan. We have a wood business. We have a somewhat of a blueberry business. We have very many things that are happening here. And let us not forget that. The departing words the last time from Ken was that the farm had already reached its projected revenue. Correct?
They have not yet, but it looks like we're gonna go over that.
Okay. So, if we have to push the delegation aside after their July 25th meeting, when they say, no, we can't support this, it's too complicated, it's too whatever they're going to use for an excuse, we do just need to move full steam ahead to support what we have. And we do have wonderful assets, and we can work on that mission statement without.
Well, I think that's important because, as Will said, if he does not purchase wood this year, he has no product next year.
Yep.
If we do not fertilize fields this year, we have no product next year. So yes, I know the budget is worked on by you, but I think it's also up to this group that if we don't get delegation support, we somehow have to assist in the push to keep what we've got funded. I mean, I'd hate to lose a wood processor because they don't put enough money in the budget next year to make a final payment.
Yeah. Well,
I'd hate to lose our tree farm status because they don't put anything in to be able to go out and, revamp the forestry plan and bring in logging cuts. Unfortunately, I know it's been a good hay year for here, but it's been a good hay year for everybody else too. So, we do have these assets. We can't just rely on the timeline, what else can be done with the land. We sort of also have to be supportive of at least maintaining the assets we have until a true business plan can be written up for the
let me see. I really don't look at it as it's our job to maintain those assets. It's our job to make sure that the optimal
Optimize
use
them.
system happens. That's
Right.
our
Yes.
job. It's not to maintain them. Into looking at what
Yeah.
revenue that is coming currently in from Carroll County, any reference to that is merely, this is what they're against to begin with. They hate the fact that the revenue's coming in because it doesn't allow them to completely get rid of it. Right? That's a commissioner's problem, and I'm perfectly happy to come to a commissioner's meeting and support them in the continuing use of the equipment that we have and everything else, but that really has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Well, when we invite someone to this meeting and they say, well, what's happening at the farm anyway? And my response to that is, we have a group of people who are working to try to get many team members together so that we can move forward and maximize or optimize the assets of the farm or the assets of the county. But when the second question is, was the farm going to operate? Well, the farm is operating now, and we will see what happens. We don't know what's going to happen. We need your input. Would you please come to this meeting and let us know what you think should happen?
Beautiful.
I want to ask Ken a question, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Ken. But do you have any idea at all what the appraised value of the farmland and in the farm buildings is? No.
I
Is
think
that
Frank-
something that would be possible to get?
I think the Board of Selectmen in Ossipee have that because they need to have that to
Yeah.
They would
exempt
have the
property
assessed
taxes.
value.
So by April
Yeah,
15th
yeah.
every year.
I'm
the
just
counties-
wondering, you know, what, at the last meeting, we talked about this just as a passing reference, but I'm just wondering, what is this all worth? I mean, what's, if all of a sudden, if a group of investors came along and they said, you know what, we think this is a great area to do what the county already owns, the land, what would it cost to replicate this? To buy the land, to put up the buildings? And I'm just curious, that's an incredible value. We're talking about optimal use of county assets.
I will be
There's a
happy.
value there.
I'll be happy to go to
Oh, okay,
town
would
hall
you, Susan?
tomorrow. and
Okay, yes,
pull that
I'm just
information
curious.
out.
I think that's important, because if the delegation and the commissioners decide, no, we're just gonna jettison this thing, what do we jettison? What's the value of that asset? Because, I mean, it would cost money to rebuild that, to put it all together. I'm just curious, what is it? And in our mission statement, the optimal use of those county assets, I think that's a key component of that. We've got this incredible investment, there's no mortgage on it, we own it free. So how do we basically optimize the return on that investment? We've got business people on that delegation and the commissioners, let's look at this from one aspect, just one aspect, as an investment. How do we get a good return on that investment? That's what we're talking about, optimal use. Anyway,
If I have to leave in about 5 minutes
Okay.
to another meeting, I apologize, but I think when we first got here, we said we wanted to do two things. One is identify the talking points for Andy,
Yep.
which we've done,
Yep.
and then also clarify how we're communicating to the delegation or anyone that we're inviting to the meeting on the 20th.
Yep.
So do we want to maybe talk about those things now?
okay,
And then
all right.
just 'cause
Go
I
ahead,
have
lead
to
it off,
leave.
Olivia. Well, okay, we basically feel we've covered this?
Yes.
Okay, all right, next time, go ahead, Olivia.
Well, I guess I would just ask, you know, those that have talked to the delegation, I mean, what are we hearing? What are the needs that we need to make sure?
Okay,
How are we communicating why they should come to this meeting on the?
all right, how are we communicating with the delegation? I mean, we've had some of them here. I'm going on the basis that in the course of a week, we've talked with several people in the delegation. If true, what's the fit? What are we getting?
Well,
I know that Wendy had written a letter to,
Yeah, I'd written a draft letter to Representative Umberger, sort of asking for her support that I sent around to everyone.
Yes.
That outlined some of the talking points that Andy Kendall had. I think it would be worth us drafting an invitation reinforcing the notice that Representative Umberger has sent out about the 20th and inviting, from our committee, inviting all of the delegation members to this meeting, talk about what we hope Andy Kendall is going to talk about, you know, where we sort of see this process going. Encourage them to ask any questions that they have during this time. That's why we're trying to get him up here, is to address any questions or concerns that they have, and then outline the next steps that, you know, we hope you'll come and hear this presentation on the 20th. You as our chair are going to attend their meeting on the 25th, and what we're hoping to get from them is a letter of support, that they would support the process of us moving forward with inviting the Kendall Foundation to help us through this facilitated process to look at the mission of the optimal use of the county assets.
support, that's good. I'm very happy to promise by Sunday to have a draft of that out to people. I mean, other people can do it too, but I'll get a draft out
Yeah.
That'd be
to
great.
you, and then you can
Okay.
send it to everybody else.
Let me just jump in. I have had an opportunity to talk to several of the delegation, some members of the delegation. And what I find, and I hope I'm not reading into this more than what they're saying, but the few that I have talked with basically have expressed to me a real willingness, a curiosity to hear what Andy Kendall has to say and what this process may be about. I have not found any sort of reservations of why are we doing this and the whole thing. but rather a real willingness
Yeah.
to listen.
Last-
We had 4 or 5 of them here last week, and I talked with several of them, and I did not find any resistance. Now, maybe they're just saying what they think I want to hear. I don't know. I don't know them that well. But I found a real willingness to say, yeah, this is interesting. Let's find out more. And if any of you have talked with any of the delegation and representatives, what sort of a message are you getting back? Because I'm getting, no one's saying, where do I sign on to this thing? But an interest, a curiosity. What is this all about?
There's as I said, I've noticed a willingness to listen.
Yes.
I'm hoping Mr. Kendall can turn it into the
Yes.
verb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we need to make clear is that, this really is his 3rd visit up here.
Yes.
And so we do
Maybe his
have
last.
some steps that we need them to take as a
Yes.
result of this.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
this is what we're gonna be asking for following that meeting.
Yeah.
And, it's either, yeah, we're interested, no, we're not, or, we don't, if they come back with, we don't have enough information, well, for this committee's perspective, I take that as a no. And that's, where we move
Yeah.
on with our own plans, but I think, as a result of this last meeting, we need to get an answer, one way or the
Yeah.
other.
My question to that would be, we don't have enough answers, but how do we get more information then? How do we get that information to make those decisions? The only way we get it is by going along with the feasibility
Right,
study.
right.
But anyway, okay.
So Henry, you will draft
By
that
Sunday,
and
I'll
send
get-
it around?
I'll get something done by Sunday, and as I
Okay.
said, I'm not shy about this. I send out, I work on it, but I don't have my heart in it. It's a draft, that's what it is.
Okay.
It's something to cause other people to say, wait a minute, say
Yeah.
it this way.
Olivia, go ahead, continue.
No, that's, I think if we can just make sure we're directly communicating with
With the
the,
delegation.
all the members of the delegation.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we've talked to a lot of the subcommittee of the county, the Learning Center, maybe it's worth,
Yeah.
sending it out to
Yeah.
everyone on
Yeah.
the delegation. Because it seems like
Yeah.
that subcommittee is very interested, and they're in the know, but maybe not everyone is in the know.
Well, I've got the two of you here. I have a question about the Learning Center. Somewhere in this discussion, I thought I've heard that to have a Learning Center, you have to have an operating farm. That this somehow has to be a part of this whole thing.
That's what Remick told them at their meeting.
Okay, all right. So if
If
we
you go
go
back on the tape, you'll see that the head director of Remick's farm said one of the best ways to run a learning center is to have a working farm.
Okay, and Representative Cordelli didn't flesh that out in any great detail. So I'm just wondering how the delegation sees the Learning Center. What is its role? What is this going to do? I'm just not sure. Does anybody have any idea?
Well-
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Henry, yeah.
Well, and
Yeah,
you
go
can,
ahead. You
no,
probably know more about that.
I'm
Now,
telling
kids, don't
Ed to
fight.
correct me if I'm wrong. But it's my understanding
Yeah.
they wanted to enhance people's ability in the county, be it farmers or
Yeah,
whatever, through private investors to assist with learning and education of different aspects of agricultural life.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily farming per se.
Okay.
It could be, and you brought it up yourself, it could be an incubator business
Yeah.
like they have up in Conway.
Yeah.
That you have somebody come out that day and talk about how to build your building plans. You may be able to lease an acre of land here to start. Am I sort of correct? Help me out here? Yeah.
Okay. all right,
So
all right.
it's, I think the Learning Center is as wide open as our county lands
Oh,
are
oh,
right
okay,
now.
all
So
right,
it's
all
not
right.
per se a quote vegetable garden,
Okay.
plowing, that kind.
It's bigger than that.
It's bigger than that.
Okay, all right, all right.
So it could be a processing, if a processing plant comes in, the Learning Center could help people come in and see how you process, and maybe collaborative education. I know Representative Cordelli said he talked with the Farm Museum. It might be learning, what used to be here for farm implements
Okay,
and
all
stuff.
right,
So I
all
think
right.
it's as wide open as we are.
Okay, all right,
Blacksmithing, yeah.
all right.
Yeah, blacksmithing,
Yeah.
something that comes
Okay.
up, horticulture, if you end up with hydroponics greenhouse, I'm sure there'd be people in the area interested. And they were looking towards the cooperative extension to try and put on more programs here. but there's a lot of programs that go on throughout the county from top to bottom, because we are a rather large county to have everybody driving to Carroll to put on, but again, programs originating.
Okay, all right. That answers that. Okay, well, we've talked about inviting the delegation to the July 20th, and Henry, you're gonna be coming up with just some sort of a rough
No,
draft.
by
of that.
Sunday, I'll get a copy of it.
Okay, okay. All right. Now, we had also talked, since this is an election year, of also inviting all of the county candidates, both commissioners and representatives. And I think our reasoning for that was, since it is an election year, and that election is gonna come before we're finished, of whatever final report or proposal we put on the table here, we wouldn't have a lot of new people just sitting here saying, what is this all about? I don't understand this at all. That they would at least have a preliminary basis to know what we were talking about. And then from that point on, you know, to learn more. Does the committee still feel that that's a good idea, is to invite?
Any idea about how many, every seat is up, and 3 people could run for each seat, so there could be as many as 30 people that are running,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there could be. Yeah.
I've been told that in the Mount Washington Valley, in the greater Conway area, there are 3 seats and there are 10 people running for those 3
Just
seats.
for those.
Right.
So it's a significant number, so, and there are 15 seats, so
Yeah,
what are
okay,
we
so
getting,
45, as
20
many
or
as
25
45.
people, run? I don't know.
I would suggest that many of those people would not be able to come to a meeting in the middle of the day, in the middle of
Yeah.
the week. But I wonder if, when we write the letter to the delegation, that we then just write a little note and send the copy that we send to the delegation to the persons who are interested in
Yeah.
sitting in those seats.
Yeah, because one or two of them might win, and 1 or 2 of them might use
Right.
the farm to
Right.
get it, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
Where do we get that information? Do you know, how do we reach out to those folks?
They've got a file somewhere.
It's
Is it
Secretary of
town?
State.
I
Secretary of
have
State
a
has
chart
it.
of all those people
Yeah.
that
Do
are
you?
running in there.
Oh,
Okay.
you can get that information, Susan?
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
it.
Oh, well, fair.
Great.
So
Yeah,
I'll-
if you could make that available, that'd be great.
Yeah,
I'll bring my envelopes.
and there's a good possibility
Yeah.
that whatever letter we end up with the delegation, you take out a
Right.
couple sentences.
Yeah,
or
and
add a
we
couple
use the same,
sentences.
invite
Yeah.
them as well.
Pretty
yes.
much the same letter.
So you're
Exactly.
gonna have that done by Sunday?
Sunday, I'll
Yes,
have a
okay.
copy to you.
Okay.
And then when should we
Yeah.
get back to you, because this is a short turnover, we're actually mailing things, hard mail.
Oh, let's see,
Need to get
today
that
is
out
Wednesday,
Are
so.
we gonna try to
We
mail
wait till
things
Sunday
or
or
just
I would,
electronically?
yeah, I'd do it electronically.
Yeah, if we can do it
electronic
electronically.
emails.
As
Well,
long
I
as
can
it's a
say
contact
that
address.
Yeah.
we don't do the
Although we would
delegation
like- it would be
electronically
good to get
because they don't,
something.
half
Do
of them
both.
don't get their
Just do
mail
both.
except the day they go to Concord.
Mhm.
They're not
Do
going
both.
to Concord.
Email and then.
I've
Yeah,
got
we
the
could,
email
um,
addresses of all the delegation. I went on the state website and got those, so
Right.
I've got those.
Plus
Except
they
that
have
they
their-
don't read their
Well,
mail.
if you don't read it, then.
But I
Well,
say you
that's-
send it electronically and you also send it in the US Postal
Yeah, yeah.
Service.
Well, you have no money to spend, so.
I'll pay the postage.
I'll pony
Bring a
up
roll of
60, I'll
stamps.
pony up
I've got
60 stamps, come on,
too,
man.
But did I miss something? Because Damien was here our last meeting and said he was putting an article in.
He's done nothing yet. He
Okay,
called-
so I haven't missed it.
No, you haven't missed it.
Okay.
He
Well,
called
I
me
guess
last
he would be
night.
another avenue, though, to
Yes.
put this invitation in.
Yes.
So actually, we could include, send this letter to him and also see if there's a way to get it in the
Yeah, well, once
Independent.
Yeah.
sort of, I get it out by Sunday, and I may get it sooner, I know I can have it done by Sunday, but
Yeah.
I'll try to do it sooner, but, you know, if we can come to an agreement what the letter actually says by Monday or Tuesday, or Wednesday,
Yeah,
we can decide
that's what I
who
was
to send it
asking.
to after that.
So if it gets approved on Sunday, and then we can get something in the mail on Monday, that's still less than 10 days' notice.
Yeah.
So the publicity in the newspaper, I think, is essential, and it would have to get into the newspaper, if it's gonna be before the meeting, it'd have to
Right.
get into the newspaper this
I'll
Monday.
Tuesday.
I'll get my letter done by Friday,
What's that?
Okay.
the first draft. I'll have the first draft by Friday.
Damon called me last
The
night,
weeklies.
and he wanted to know if the April 20th date was now set.
Yeah.
I keep calling July, April, I don't know why, but he wanted if the July 20th date with Andy Kendall was solid, and I said yes.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. Now, asking for that I assumed, which is always dangerous, that therefore he was in fact putting together an article, and he wanted that date to lock that date in. But he didn't say that.
But you're gonna ask.
But he gave me his cell phone number, so I'm gonna call him back and say, okay, where are we at this point in time? But yes, so we're still on record then that we do want to invite not only the delegation and the commissioners, but also all the candidates as well. All right.
Don't need any help.
A note to the Farm Bureau.
Thank you,
Quorum's now
Olivia.
over, I think.
Quorum's
Talk to you
gone,
later.
all right.
Oh, so I emailed you with a question. Could you email me back with the
Yeah,
answer?
sure.
Being as
Okay,
a
thank
quorum
you.
is leaving, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
No,
We can-
pass the minutes first.
Quorum's leaving.
That means
We
we can't
started
make
with
any more
quorum, I-
decisions.
Okay, all right, for the minutes, okay. Have you all had an opportunity to read the minutes?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
so moved.
if,
moved
is
to-
there a motion and a second to accept the minutes
Second.
of the June 29th meeting?
Done.
Any errors or omissions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Aye.
Thank you, Olivia.
And
No,
I'm
motion to
perfectly happy
adjourn.
to sit around and chat, but at this point, it's not a meeting,
Right,
so.
it's not a
Okay,
meeting.
well, I
It's
can't
back-
make
back to
decisions.
non-meeting.
Okay, I want to talk about the public awareness. a little
Motion to
bit.
adjourn.
You have to, because we're not in.
I'm
We can-
perfectly happy
we
to
can
sit
talk, but
around,
we
but we
just
just
can't
can't
make
make
a
any more
decision.
decisions.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
all right.
I would like to say that we should, the same notice we'll send to the Farm Bureau, as we have talked about before, and we'll send to those persons who are engaged in farmers markets in Carroll County,
Mhm.
as we have
Yes.
talked about before.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and I'll get those addresses.
The second comment I'd like to make
Yes,
is to
Becky.
keep it a little bit more formal is when we all decide on this letter, because it's going to be done electronically.
Yes.
That you actually put it into a minute form so that it is, because that is considered a minute if a decision's being made.
Right.
So if
What do
we
you mean
all,
by minute form?
rather than just, we
The
actually.
motion was made in.
The motion was made, we actually do it as a motion. That
Okay,
you either
okay.
make a motion
Okay.
by email that says, do
Would-
we accept this or do we
Okay,
not
would
accept
you just
it?
send me,
That's
would
a
you
good
send me a
idea.
rough draft of what you
Sure.
mean by that, so I can
Yeah, it's
visualize
just
it?
so that it's,
Okay,
if it ever gets questioned, it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
electronic meeting where everybody
yeah.
said yes or no.
Just before we go,
It's all your
and
fault.
talking about the public awareness, we haven't adjourned yet, have we? The public awareness. I took the liberty of calling Jack Cuddy, who's the executive director
Yeah.
of the Mount Washington Valley Economic Council.
Right.
Which is a very pro-business, pro-economic development, 10-town
Yeah.
organization. And I ran by him what it was that we hoped that this committee would be able to accomplish, and what we saw was just some great opportunities here. And the point was, I said, Jack, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this information out there to get it before as many people as possible. Your organization, they've got a 30-member board of directors. These are all business people, town officials. This is a good group. I said, I would like to get on your agenda for your next meeting and give you 10 or 15 minutes to make this presentation. He said, okay, no problem.
Good.
Now, there's also Waco in Wolfboro. I think, is it still Denise Pomeroy?
Yeah.
Okay. Get on the Rotary groups and so forth. And I'd be willing to do a lot of this, not all of it. But here's an opportunity to go before groups. We've talked about increasing public awareness. We've talked about increasing what the county farm is all about. We've talked about increasing support and so forth. That I think a lot of it's going to be, we're going to have to get out there and be talking to these various organizations. We don't need a half, 3/4 of an hour, but just 10 or 15 minutes to kind of very simply, this is what it's all about,
Right.
and this is
Beautiful.
why we're here.
Yeah.
And I think it could be very effective in doing that.
Yeah, we've
So-
talked about doing that before, and let's move on it. We also talked about having someone go on drive time. And
Yes,
I wonder
yeah.
if there's some person who lives closer to Conway that could see if there was an opportunity to.
C'est moi. I live close to the radio station. Again, I'd be willing to do that.
To see if we can get on there before
Yeah, yeah.
the meeting on the 20th. That's only all next week.
Exactly.
Well, before we had said we were gonna do all that, we were actually gonna make a list of talking points so that everybody
Yes,
had
we
the
need to
same
do
talking
that.
point.
We want to be sure that
But this
whoever's
is,
making,
am I correct in saying this, that drive time is now limited to about 8 actual minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
It's very
They've
short.
really
It used to
cut
be a
back.
half an hour and then
Yeah.
it was breaks.
Yeah.
And now it's
yeah.
About 8 minutes.
When I was more active in the Economic Council, we were on drive time on a regular basis. We also were on Channel 3. Now, there's another possibility, Channel 3.
I'd ask them to come to our meeting.
Well,
So if you want a goal on this whole thing of public awareness, and you're looking at Mount Washington Valley, is to tell yourself that within 6 months, you're gonna be invited to do eggs and issues.
Excuse me?
If we could get to the point where we had enough interest in the community
Yeah.
that Eggs and Issues would allow us to come in and speak, that would be a huge, represent a pretty big success.
now let me tell you what else I did. I'm on the board of the North Country Council, which covers COA's Upper Carroll and Upper Grafton County. And I am on the SEDS committee, which stands for Community Economic Development Strategy. And they've got a meeting this Friday. And so I called the person who heads that and discussed what we're trying to do here, again, as an economic development driver. We had a very interesting conversation. He was very supportive. He said, I'll give you a few minutes at the end of our meeting to
Beautiful.
basically make a case. He said, we'll have you on the agenda for the next meeting. We have it more fleshed out. But what he told me, I thought was interesting, he says, your timing is perfect. And I said, how's that? He said, because at this meeting this Friday, we've got a guy coming from Manomet, which is over in Brunswick. And he says, and he's going to be talking partially about the very thing that you're doing.
Right.
And I said, really? He said, yeah. He says, you want to talk to him after the meeting? And I said, okay. So the point is, we are starting to broaden the
Yeah.
connections that we've got here. And as we've talked at many meetings, the importance of basically getting our message out, what this committee is doing, what this committee is hoping to do, and what effect we hope that will have on the county.
Right.
And I think that's important, is to increase that public awareness, and that, that here is something that people should be paying attention to, particularly in an election year.
Yeah.
Well, I think another avenue is
Yep.
just your weekly selectmen meetings as well.
Yes, that's a good point,
I mean,
Becky.
just to have one
Yes.
of us to go to our own
Yep,
town
yep,
selectmen's meeting and
yep.
say, hey, you've heard a lot about it, but do you know what has transpired since the budget was passed and where this group is
Yes.
going?
Last night, our Conservation Commission met, and I went before them and gave a talk about what we're doing here, what we hope to do. And I found a great deal of interest.
Right, that's another avenue for the letter that we composed,
Yeah.
conservation.
Yeah,
Commission.
I'll
exactly.
be happy to work on a draft of an aggressive community awareness campaign.
Yep, yep.
Just
Beautiful.
listing those kinds of
Yeah,
things.
excellent,
Yep,
excellent.
yep.
yeah.
Cables and the press and the community and
Yep,
the conservation.
And it may come as a
Agriculture
surprise to you that I'm
commissions.
not shy about speaking in public, so if you need somebody else to get.
No, Henry, I never would have known that. And that's good. We picked the right person. But no, there's a lot of ground to cover. The thing is, and I don't want to sound like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but we're running, time is fleeting here. Tempus fugit. We are losing time. And we don't have a lot of time to really start to put something together. And we really need to start thinking about that. I mean, we've talked about getting more public involvement and speaking before groups, which is important. We haven't discussed the survey. I think we had decided that public awareness and increasing we should precede the survey, and I agree with
Yeah,
that.
that's a good idea.
We're asking people to answer questions, they don't have a clue how to answer them. But if we can increase that awareness, and so more people are aware of what is going on, that can kind of shift the dynamics dramatically, and
Yeah.
that's what we're hoping.
Yeah,
So,
as far as I can see, the only real constraint we have on time is an agreement that was made with the commissioners and some sort of a expectation of the delegation, but I've been involved long enough in county government, understood county government long enough to know that it moves very slowly. The assets aren't going anywhere.
no, they're not.
Right, and even to divest themselves of an asset takes the commissioners and the delegations a year and a
Yeah.
half of a small little asset,
Yeah.
takes forever, so.
Well, there's one word that no matter who I talk to keeps coming up, and I find it interesting, and that's the word cooperative. And I find that very, very interesting. It just keeps reappearing, and no matter who I'm talking with, that word comes up. And I have to relate a story to you. 10 years ago, think about it, 15 years ago, I had the good fortune to spend 11 days in Sweden and Finland on a forestry visit. They are light years ahead of us. And we spent the day in Sweden at a co-op, at a landowners co-op called Sodra, which is Swedish for southern. There were 26,000 landowners in this co-op. And they collectively owned 4 or 5 million acres of land. And what they were doing with that was just absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe some of the data that was coming out of this. And I had never heard, I couldn't even spell co-ops before that.
Right.
Never mind, what are they all about? But after that trip, it was just, I became a firm believer in cooperatives and in the potential of what they could do. And this one was on forestry, landowners, but it was just fascinating what they were able to do.
Yeah.
And just one tidbit of this thing, that they were, as members of this co-op, they had a bank there, they had a bank.
Yeah.
And they put money, they could deposit into this bank. And what they did is the interest that they earned was on the revenue, the income of the co-op. And 1 year, the year before that, the co-op had paid interest on their savings of 150%.
That's great.
And I'm sitting there going, what? Yeah, 150%. And so I'm thinking, I got my money in the wrong bank.
And the Swedish Tax Department of Revenue Administration was what? We're gonna be attacking them pretty soon, yeah, right.
Does anybody have anything else?
I would move
When are we
that-
meeting next?
Oh, we adjourned already. 3:05.
That's a sticky problem, yes, you're right. We should have set a date for the meeting. Why don't we kind of talk about what days were available, and then you as chairman can pull through the
Let me
email.
I know we've been meeting the last few Wednesdays, and Wednesday is not the best day for me at all. We started out meeting on Fridays, and Friday was always a better day for me, but let's let the committee see if we can't reach some consensus.
So the next Friday is either the 8th or the 15th.
And that's before the 20th, so that gives us a meeting before Andy.
Right.
I can't do the 15th,
You cannot.
no.
The 8th is only 2 days away, and if the letter, I don't have the letter done, we haven't had a chance to think about it, we don't have much to do. So
Yeah.
how about the 12th, which is a Tuesday?
The 12th is good for me. What about the rest? No, it's not good for Susan. Okay. What about Thursday?
Thursday the 14th?
That works.
It works for me.
Thursday the 14th? What about you, Becky?
I'm open.
Okay.
Could we meet in the morning, early?
I've got, Ken, you talk to us here. Is the Thursday the
As
14th?
far as I know, it is.
Okay. Thursday the 14th,
What do you consider early?
7:14.
At 7 a.m.?
Oh, you really are an early bird,
That would
aren't
be
you?
great for me.
What time?
7 a.m.
I'd be willing.
Are you
How
bringing the
about-
coffee?
How about we say 8:30?
Summer.
Because that's when the county office
That
is
sounds
open,
good.
right?
8:30 in the morning,
Well,
coming
they
up.
open at 8, don't they?
Does 8:30 work, Ken?
Works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Works for me.
What's the date?
Thursday the 14th. A.M. All right.
8 a.m.? 8:30 a.m.?
8:30.
8:30.
8:30 a.m.
I will
Better for me.
let Melissa,
Oh, boy.
Frank, who else is missing?
Olivia.
Has
We'll let-
anybody
I can let
heard from
Olivia know.
Frank Riley? I've made several phone calls to him without any luck at all.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if he basically has felt that he no longer wants to stay involved.
I'll check in with them.
Okay, all right.
Well, I
I
think,
know they've been very busy because they've been holding public hearings on the 28 and 171 and what is?
Westward Shore.
Westward
Westward Shores,
Shores. They've
yeah.
had a lot of public
Very
hearings.
Oh,
and
okay,
stuff,
all
so they're a
right.
very
Well, he may
busy
be very
office right now.
preoccupied then, yeah,
yeah, I think, and
Okay.
truly, we're off the camera now, right? 'Cause the
No.
meeting adjourned.
No.
we're not.
It's still
Well,
grinding.
truly, my feeling is that we're all very busy and many people feel like it's a waste of time until we have a good buy-in from the delegation.
Yeah,
And many people would rather work on getting rid of some of the folks like Gene Chandler, who openly says, there's a reason that there are no county farms in the state of New Hampshire. I would never, there's nothing you can do to make me support the county farm.
And
You could vary-
generally, it's the delegation.
Right, exactly.
I will say that I do not think I'm being unreasonably positive, my attitude right now. I feel pretty good about this right now. I really do.
Good,
The delegation-
good.
If we
Good.
can leave the politics out of it, it would be
Yeah.
wonderful. We don't, if we're all on the same team and we're going to the same end,
Yep.
it'll work.
So I'll see you a week from tomorrow.
We've got
At
the
8:30.
extension with us, and we've got the Learning Center group with us, and we've got the chair of the delegation with us, and the commissioners, and we'll win.